Today, I think we're going to focus on, scams and security.
Yesterday, I got from an old college professor an email from her actual email address, but it was clearly a phishing. Her email account had been compromised. So you also can't even quite trust the known contacts to send you something that's always trustworthy. It's a social engineering problem. It's less technical or technological. As soon as there's a public data set out there, as soon as there's some way that you're associated as a cryptocurrency user, there's a little bit of extra motivation and, maybe a prize that these scammers perceive at the end of the road of trying to scam somebody.
Welcome to episode 6 of the Bitcoin Boomers. I'm Bob Burnett. I have with me co-hosts Larry Leopard and Gary Leland. And today's special guest is Joe Kelly from Unchained Capital. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning. Great to be here.
We're happy to have you. Today, I think we're going to focus on, scams and security and kind of all those things that they make a lot of news. And I think especially in our generation, I think it scares a lot of people. The boomers hear this stuff and it immediately like puts them into kind of like a deer in the headlights fright sort of mode. And maybe there's some justification for that and, maybe not. And I think, Bitcoin, when you combine Bitcoin and the boomers, I think it gets even scarier. I mean, the scams certainly are not exclusive to Bitcoin, but I think
stakes are quite high.
Yeah. But I think when somebody finds out there's a boomer with Bitcoin, well, I think maybe the bullseye's a little bigger. Maybe, I'm not sure. I don't know if there's any way to create a statistic on that, but maybe Joe, because to get started, maybe we should even start with just a little bit of what Unchained is and what you do and any opening comments you might have on this topic.
Yeah, happy to go into details. Unchained this year will celebrate our 10th year anniversary. We've been at it for quite a while now, longer than half of Bitcoin's life, which is crazy to think about. So maybe we're becoming a boomer company. I don't know, but we've always had the idea and the vision of serving long-term Bitcoin holders with financial services, acknowledging that while Bitcoin is a new form of money, it's unlikely to be best served by the way traditional financial services does it through centralized custody and a system with increased counterparty risk relative to what you can get when you self-custody your Bitcoin. So we've always tried to deliver our financial services in a format where clients can hold their own keys. That happens in our Vault product, where clients can custody Bitcoin in a format where they hold 2 of 3 keys. That gives them unilateral control because it's a 2 of 3 multi-sig, so they can move their Bitcoin without us being involved or preventing that. And likewise, if they lose a key, we can help them recover through our key. We also have loans. We lend dollars against Bitcoin as collateral. We have IRA accounts and a trading desk clients can buy and sell Bitcoin through. And then late last year, we launched a trust company that can provide institutional trustee services for folks' personal or private trusts. And so that also engages in some more greater forms of wealth management or financial planning for folks depending on what they need. And I mean, back to a lot of the subject matter for this talk, I think kind of led with this intersection of Bitcoin and boomers, but it's certainly not a problem restricted to boomers. Even anyone of any generation is susceptible to the main form of fraud and these kinds of scams that target people's Bitcoin, because most of all, it's a social engineering problem. It's less technical or technological. I think is kind of like the not so much the main thrust of it. It's really people getting at you with urgency or getting at you in ways that trigger you into making mistakes, and that's something that you're susceptible at any age, really. Practically, would be one opening point.
You said a few things that I think maybe would be worth expanding, especially early in the show before we get a little deeper into some of it. And I think one of the things that maybe confuses boomers about Bitcoin is what does it mean to own Bitcoin? What does it mean to custody Bitcoin? Why is it different? Because I think it's so common for, and not just boomers, this is a everybody thing, but they think of, let's say they own Tesla stock and they use that phrase to own the stock. And, to own something or to have rights to something or custody of something, there's some subtleties in there that I don't know, maybe you want to expand on.
Yeah, I think it has been part of the joy or the discovery process of working around a new asset in terms of how to reconcile it with the existing legal frameworks and system that's stood up around stocks and securities and the forms of property we have in traditional finance. So I think that one of the clearest ways to think about it is to separate what is legal ownership, what is the type of ownership that means something to an attorney, to the U.S. government, to a judge when it comes to probate or a process around someone's estate. That's one form of ownership when it means to own something. And separately, there's a form of ownership that looks like control, or like you are the actual person that can move the physical asset into the control of another party. And so those are, in some ways, those can kind of collapse, and be the same thing in Bitcoin. Or that's how I think a lot of people start in their Bitcoin journey, thinking that, if I take self custody, surely I do own it, or I control it now. But that is only part of the puzzle, because if you die and pass on, and that Bitcoin wasn't registered as part of your estate, or you're filing your taxes and you don't have a clear statement or something you can hand to your accountant about maybe assets you have, then you're kind of missing a little bit more of that legal piece. And that's something we found at Unchained that we provide that helps bridge those concepts, because you can get a simple statement from your Unchained Vault account, a PDF that an accountant or an attorney is going to understand, and it's got a financial services company letterhead kind of thing on it, in a clear end of month balance type of a thing. It feels so very rudimentary, but it's a very practical thing we need in our financial lives that just sending your accountant a Bitcoin address doesn't quite suit. So it's important to have kind of both of those processes, or both of those factors at play when considering what it means to own something that often our legal system and our regulatory system depends on some party attesting to a certain thing. And Unchained kind of gets to attest in a very real, cryptographically proven way that this account under this name or under this trust owns or holds this Bitcoin, and then we can help provide evidence for that, while that party can still maintain control that we don't have.
No, as we explore this, I think Larry, you in the gold world, coming with roots in the gold world, the whole, what's a bearer asset? A lot of the sound money folks, are rooted in that, and then there's kind of the responsibility that goes with it too, that I think probably creates some. It's kind of weird, but having the bearer asset or physically possessing something almost is scarier to a lot of people than having somebody else do that. And I don't, maybe you could expand on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly there's always been the issue with gold of where do you store it? Do you dare store it in your house? And if somebody shows up with a gun, are they going to take it from you? So there's there are custodians and there are safe deposit boxes, and there are lots of people you can pay to store your gold. Of course, the issue there is then you don't have direct control of it anymore. In the 30s, when they grabbed the gold, they did go to the safe deposit boxes. So that's not necessarily a way to protect yourself from confiscation.
You're talking about 6102. They went to the safety deposit boxes.
Actually,
really, I didn't know that.
We went to the banks and told the banks to open up the safe deposit boxes, see if there's any gold in there, and they had to turn it in.
Really? I didn't know that. That's an interesting tidbit.
Data point. Yeah. So, and the fine was $10,000 in prison and stuff. I still think a lot of people took their gold out.
Larry, I think that was like per ounce, wasn't it?
Well, I don't know what the fine was. I remember.
And which would be like $100,000 today. So it would really scare people.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think there were some people who, just hid it under their mattress anyway. I mean, the one beautiful thing about a bearer asset is that, if you're smart about it, nobody needs to know that you have it. But an intangible bearer asset like Bitcoin is obviously a kind of a different kettle of fish. I mean, 12 words and you control it, and you don't need a safe per se, although you certainly have to make sure you got the 12 words and aren't going to lose them or forget them. So it's a more modern problem, but self-sovereignty has always required, personal responsibility. And, there's some segment of the population that doesn't want to take personal responsibility. They or they'd rather pay an expert to do it, and that's fine. I mean, they leave their money in a bank because, they know that the bank is theoretically honest, not all honest, but theoretically they are, and they can, sue the bank if the bank takes their money. And so, I mean, and that's why there'll always be a need for an Unchained and the services that Joe provides, which are very, very useful services, because some people just don't want to mess with all the, the responsibility of being self-sovereign, and it's only in extremis that being fully self-sovereign really counts, right? If the world kind of goes to hell in a handbasket and, the government says, well, we're going to confiscate all the Bitcoin. Well, they're going to call up Joe's company and say, hey, who are your clients? And Joe's company is going to be forced, I think, to disclose that. I don't know, Joe, maybe you can comment on that.
We are regulated. So we, have a responsibility to respond to lawful requests. And but part of what you said, a lot of it depends on kind of goals. And part of your point about, with this a bearer asset, you can keep it yourself or outside the system. A lot of our clients are faced with wanting to own their Bitcoin in a trust, or own it in an IRA, or own it in these other legal vehicles that then really do need to be kind of registered or known somewhere. There's
nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think that for most people, that's the way you should go. For those extreme nutcases like me, who prepared for the world to go to really dark place, I like being self-sovereign.
Hey, can I ask you a question, Joe, on this subject that Larry's talking about here? Someone asked me a couple of weeks ago, and I really didn't know the exact answer to this. They were more on Larry's way of thinking that, everything was going to go to hell and we were going to have 1931 again or whatever, and that they would come for Bitcoin. And the question was, if you have your Bitcoin with a company that's doing multi-sig like yourself, and they come down to Unchained and take all your computers and pull your server offline or whatever, do we still have access to get our Bitcoin out? Okay. I didn't really, I assume so, but I thought I would double check and
it depends,
make sure for anyone who is wondering about that.
The important piece is when you are creating your vault, when you're instantiating a vault inside your account with Unchained, there's an important piece of data there called your wallet configuration file. As long as you have that wallet configuration file, which we encourage and help our clients back up when we're helping them onboard, as long as you have that and your two keys, you do maintain your control. You have all the pieces you would need to recover on your own.
Okay, excellent news. I figured there was. I just didn't know the answer, and I remember downloading all that a long time ago. So it's been a long time since I opened my account there. So my memory is not that good. It needed to be reminded.
We thought about it, and when we do our concierge onboarding or our professional onboarding services for clients, we'll often walk through that sovereign recovery exercise. And we happen to maintain an open source wallet called Caravan that you can load in a browser, and it's you could even download and have the code ready yourself if you wanted to. But the same wallet configuration file and these same keys you use with their Unchained Vault, those can be uploaded into any open source multi-sig wallet, Sparrow, Spectre if it's still around, Liana wallet, many of these others that or Nunchuck that have some of this functionality. You can load in that file, and talk to your and sign with your wallets.
Abundant Minds is an Oregon-based husband and wife-owned Bitcoin mining company making Bitcoin mining accessible to investors of all ages and experience levels. Their fully managed white glove service allows you to own all of your own equipment and earn steady Bitcoin-denominated income without lifting a finger. Whether you're starting with 10,000 or 10 million, Abundant Minds is your one-stop shop. No overseas call center, no surprise upcharges. With one-on-one onboarding, consulting, and help navigating both Bitcoin and the Bitcoin mining space at every turn, you can rest easy while Bitcoin flows to you 24/7. Learn more at abundantminds.com.
Bitcoin Well is the best place to be buying and selling Bitcoin in Canada and the US. And now with Bitcoin Well Infinite, it's also the best place to be making large buys at their OTC desk of over $50,000. Their white glove service gives you fast transactions, no slippage, and the lowest fees. You can scan the QR code on the screen or simply head to bitcoinwell.com/BTC sessions to sign up today. And you can share your own personalized referral link to earn commissions. When I first got into Bitcoin, I was overwhelmed. The jargon, the security risks, the fear that one mistake could cost everything. I remember staring at my screen and wondering, are my keys safe? Did I do this right? That experience is why I started BTC Sessions. For over a decade, this channel has helped millions of people like you learn how to use and secure Bitcoin. But I realized something. For many people, videos aren't enough. Everyone learns differently. Some need to ask questions in real time as an expert walks through their setup, their goals, and their threat model. And certain things like advanced cold storage, inheritance planning, privacy, and node or mining setups often can't be fully solved by watching another tutorial. So I built BTC Mentor. I recruited the best Bitcoin educators on the planet to work with you one-on-one. Real experts, real answers, personalized hands-on guidance tailored to your exact situation. Whether you're brand new or building a complex setup, we meet you where you're at and walk with you step by step. By the end, you don't just hope your Bitcoin is safe, you know it is. If you're ready for that level of confidence, then head to btcmentor.io and book a call with us today.
Well, I downloaded Caravan quite a few years ago. Would that be something that's been updated since then, and I need to re-download a newer version?
It ought to still work in that form you had, but I would encourage you to grab the latest version, especially if it's been a few years, because it has been maintained both by us and outside contributors.
I find it interesting, a lot of the topic today, is around security and scams and that sort of thing. And we found ourselves, the first thing we end up talking about is the government seizing our Bitcoin. and
the biggest scam of all. No, just kidding.
I find that kind of funny, that we naturally went to that point so quickly. But
I'll only wrap up with just a piece there on just that, I am proud. I do think that because we're in this frontier space at Unchained, where we are exposed to a lot of these newer kinds of scams and newer ways of people trying to get at Bitcoin in a way that wasn't possible. Again, the asset didn't exist 20 years ago, but also just for people getting more clever about this, that our fraud and risk team is really at the front lines of how to figure out. It's kind of like battlefield medics or people in the Ukrainian war. It's like you're figuring out the modern ways to respond and deal with actors that are hungry for people's Bitcoin and getting more and more clever with how to get at it, and also supporting law enforcement. Because back to your point about, or a point made earlier about, how is the, who's working on this at the FBI or at these law enforcement agencies? And there are divisions that are stood up and that are, specializing more and more in this area. But they do depend on, in some ways, commercial enterprises to help them or to be a resource. And so that's definitely a function that Unchained, when there are real criminal investigations, we can sometimes support.
Well, talking about to try to get us on our original subject here, I'll dive into this. This is kind of crazy to me, but I was talking to Mel the other day about this show and about you coming on the show. And while we're talking, well, first of all, my phone is set up to only ring if it's someone in my phone book. because I get so many calls from scammers that if you're in my phone book, my phone will ring and display your name. So Mel and I are talking, and the phone rings and it says Unchained. So it's the number I have for customer service at Unchained. So I said, Mel, I got to go. It's Unchained. Let me see what they need and see if I can help them. So I hung up with Mel, went to it, and the person on the phone said, hi, this is Joe Blow from Unchained. We have a security issue on your account. Someone has logged in and requested a phone number change from this number to a new number, and we're calling to see if you have requested that. And I just thought it was funny that you guys would call. And so I said, really? And I said, can you tell me who's the boss over there at Unchained? And he thought for a second. I guess he probably was looking at his computer screen in hindsight. And he said, Joseph Kelly. I said, yeah, anyone could. To myself, I said, yeah, anyone could figure that out if they're good enough to do this scam and spoof this number. I said, well, who was the first female employee you guys had, like employee number 3? And he thought for a second, and he goes, I'm not here to answer survey questions. I'm here to help you with your security. Do you need help? You want help or not? So I just hung up. And then I said, well, I'd be a total idiot if that was Unchained and the guy was brand new and didn't know that. And here they called me and I just blew them off. So I called Unchained and said, have you seen a request for me to change my phone number? And he goes, no, you got YubiKey. I mean, set up. You got everything. There's no way anyone's getting this account to request anything. And so then I'm kind of pissed at myself. I should have stayed on the phone and see what he wanted me to do. Because I'm sure he was going to have me do something to give him access. He just didn't call because he was sitting there bored. So I'm kind of pissed. But I thought that was really interesting that they, and I have mentioned before I'm on Unchained, so they knew I was on Unchained and then they spoofed your number. So, I mean, that if I'd have been like a typical boomer, I probably would have gone, oh my gosh, this is Unchained. Look, it's Unchained's phone number here. And I probably would have started helping them. So, that's a really big thing people need to be aware of, I guess, is what I'm bringing up. Luckily, I felt extra secure after talking to my customer service person. But and if you don't have your YubiKey set up, get it set up.
Yeah.
Yes.
How often do you get those calls every day, Joe, or every week or every month? I'm not sure. I'm curious what the frequency that you guys see of.
They've happened in a way that I'd say is consistent with just industry-wide trends that really over the last 12 to 18 months, last year and a half, it's increased. I can't speak for the amount of clients that get those calls. We don't always get them reported, but reports of those kinds of calls have increased. And it's through either, and often, I mean, the most dangerous situations clients find themselves in is when they're already something else is compromised, like their Gmail. And so somebody else is, an unauthorized person or one of these fraudsters is inside of their email account that they might use with Unchained. That's how they discover that they're an Unchained client. And then they utilize that vector and that the kind of trust people have or the association they have with Unchained as an organization to then disclose too much or be persuaded to take actions that then compromise their Bitcoin and compromise their security setup. So it's definitely, and I get these calls too from Google or Apple or you look at your phone and it looks like it's the Google 800 number or something like that. And it's not a phenomenon limited to just Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. There are a lot of more increasing reports of people's iCloud architectures being compromised and things like that. So it happens. But then as soon as there's a public data set out there, as soon as there's some way that you're associated as a cryptocurrency user, there's a little bit of extra motivation and maybe a prize that these scammers perceive at the end of the road of trying to scam somebody.
I think you pretty much probably go on the list that the scammers buy of known crypto people. So we're all screwed, guys. They know it.
Well, I think folks like us, not that we're famous or anything, but we are public facing and we're associated with Bitcoin. And I had a very sophisticated attempt maybe 6 months ago with people posing as Bloomberg viewers. They had, requested an interview with me. Just I get, I'm probably on a podcast a week, something like that. So it's a very common thing for me. And they were, so we set up the interview. We set it up for like several weeks in advance to fit my schedule. They were very professional about it. We went on the interview. They had us set up just like we're using today, extremely professional about it. And then they started asking for control, like, oh, hey, we're having audio issues, we're having this, we're having that. Can we install this software, run this script, and luckily, I was in a position to get it. But I have to say it caught me off guard because they were so good. Like, this happened like 25 minutes into an interview, and they had asked me great questions about Bitcoin, about mining. They were very professional. And by the way, they started asking things like, how do you custody and how do you do this? And actually, the interview never saw the light of day, as you can guess. But like, one of the things I said was, hey, I actually use Unchained, and we use Multi-Sig, and blah blah blah. And I think that was, I think that was another layer of protection for me. Like, had I even done that, gone too far, I think I would have been okay, because they were only getting access to one of three, not two of three. I had
the same almost thing happen, except it wasn't Bloomberg. And while we were doing questions, before to set it up, their third question was, how much Bitcoin do you have?
Wow.
I was like, whoa. He goes, well, I think that's a natural question to know how much Bitcoin a guy who's been doing a Bitcoin conference has. And I said, yeah, let's forget this interview.
Good for you. Bob, the same group got through to me, and they actually did. They hacked me and they got onto my computer, and it was really kind of a disaster. They took over my Twitter account for a while, as you'll recall.
I remember that.
Remember? Yeah, it's successful. And I had checked them out. I mean, they showed me their names and photos, and I went to Bloomberg, and they were real people. But as you'll recall, on that scam, they were claiming they had video difficulties, and so they weren't actually letting us see them. You remember that?
Did have some video. There were four people, but two of them did have video. Yeah.
And did they look like the people they said they were, or not? No.
Good enough, I guess. Yeah.
Okay.
But they were all Americans, by the way, unaccented English, very articulate, highly educated people who should be putting those that intelligence and skills to practical use. It's amazing how many people choose this path, and how disappointing too. What a sad life to. Yeah,
right. To be just scamming people. There was an article recently in the Journal on that. Somewhere I read how much these people in India are making. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, there's a whole cottage industry of ripping off boomers, in America.
Giving you an example of a boomer situation here. We're going on a pilgrimage in Italy over Europe right after BitBlock Boom. And the deacon that's leading it sends an email out to 80 people who are going, and carbon copies everybody. So I get my email, and there's, what in the heck is this? And I tell Kathy, and she goes, it's okay, Kathy. Gary, you're so paranoid about anything like this. You're just overboard on the security stuff. It's crazy, Gary. These are all honest church-going people. This is her. And my thing is like, this is 80 boomers who are going to click on anything they see. This is the opposite of safe. While they may be nice people, they're not computer literate. So I have to email the deacon and send him a big explanation of the two differences between carbon copy and blind carbon copy. And he emails me back and goes, wow, thanks for that. I'll BCC from now on. But it was just crazy that my wife's going, oh, it's fine, Gary. These are honest people. They go to our church. I'm going, I'm not worried about them. I'm worried about whoever they get hacked by.
Right.
So several years ago, I was at a music. I was at a Peter Gabriel concert, and in the middle of the concert, we got a surprise, and that was that Sting came out to do a couple songs with Peter Gabriel. And so it was a really cool thing. Today we have the Bitcoin equivalent of that. So in our show with Joe Kelly, we have the pleasure of welcoming Terence Michael to the show today. So Terence, welcome to the show. And for those who don't know you, author of the book Proof of Money, very prominent voice in the Bitcoin community, big background in Hollywood and TV. And so we're happy to have you here today, Terence.
Well, thanks, guys. It's an honor to be with you guys. I always listen to you, and thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me. It looks like you guys are doing a show on scams from the scammers, or pitfalls, things to look out for online. Yeah.
Lots on, I think, how Bitcoin is securing Bitcoin is different from other things. Obviously, boomers, I think, often are targets of scams, not just in Bitcoin, but in other things as well. And we've told a couple stories about scams already. And so join on in. Let us hear what you have to say on this.
Sure. Well, seeing that Joe Kelly's here, I can mention a couple things that sort of dovetail into his platform. One, and this wasn't even a Bitcoin thing, but it ended up being a scary Bitcoin thing. My sister, who lives in a very nice community, very nice house, they were targeted by this Chilean gang that went around and was breaking into houses. And the short story is that they physically took the whole safe, ripped it out of the floor, and took the safe. And my sister called me and she's like, remember when you helped me set up a Bitcoin device key? She was using the wrong term. I'm like, yeah. She's like, I had that in there, and I also had 12 words in there. I had the password, the passphrase. And so, of course, she freaked out. What am I going to do? And, she had quite a bit of Bitcoin in there, her and her husband. And I didn't panic right away because I knew she wouldn't remember this, but, we had set up a multi-signature setup with her. She had one key with Unchained, and she had two of her keys separated. That was just one of her keys in there. But we did put a honeypot on there, and I was monitoring. There was like 500 at the time, and I think it quickly became a couple thousand, and no one ever moved it. So, the gang probably didn't even know that was Bitcoin, or otherwise they could have punched it right into Blue Wallet or Trust or whatever and immediately moved it. But of course, we just logged on to Unchained. I helped her with her key and with Unchained's key, and we just moved her into new Multi-Sig vault. So that was just like one thing one reason why over at the Bitcoin Advisor, we're always trying to tell people to try to find a collaborative security model with Bitcoin, so you don't have those single points of failure. And it doesn't matter. I mean, it could be Unchained, it could be Swan, Casa, Nunchuck. They they all effectively do the same thing. They just have slightly different customers and whatnot. So that was one of the first scams that hit close to home. The second one was we had a client of ours who finally got to their first Bitcoin. And so for them, this was a lot of money. He was divorced, has a daughter. He came to us because he was stuck on Coinbase. He didn't even know how to get it off, as a lot of people don't even know how to move their Bitcoin. So at the Bitcoin Advisor, we kind of act as key agents where we just hold a backup key. We'll help set them up wherever they want to. We're company agnostic. This guy wanted to be with Unchained. So we set him up with Unchained. They've got a key for him. He's got his own key. We helped set him up on a Trezor. We're holding a backup key. And it was only like 3 or 4 weeks in, and he says, hey, I met someone online, and, we're falling in love. She's great. I already bought tickets for her. She's flying to California, Christmas time. This was this past Christmas, and I'm going to meet her and everything. Anyways, red flags went off for me, and he didn't have to tell me. He's sovereign. He can do whatever he wants with his Bitcoin. He can obviously log on to Unchained with his key, those 2 keys, boom, send and spend. But the reason it came to us is because he had requested our key, and that's just very odd. That tells us that you lost your key or something happened. Why would you be requesting your backup key? Just log into Unchained. And simultaneously, because we were taking too long, because we always say, hey, are you sure you didn't lose your key? he went to Unchained and was requesting a key. So Unchained contacted us too and said, wait a minute, he's requesting 2 of his 3 keys. Is your client okay? Anyways, long story short, lots of text messages back and forth. We got Peter Dunworth on the phone with him and myself and just, do you know what you're doing? And he said, I know what I'm doing. Trust me. This woman already made me $10,000 in USD. I gave her 5,000. They made me 10,000. We're like, how do you know? She sent me a screenshot. I can see on the exchange. It's like, an exchange you've never heard of. And he's like, so I'm sending my whole Bitcoin. And we said, we just set you up here. You do not touch this. Don't, this is not for you to mess around. He says, no. I'm going to turn this into 2 Bitcoin. Anyways, Unchained did everything they could to try to protect him. They saw what was going on. We did everything we could. And at the end of the day, and I posted about this because I wanted to prove to the community that does not like, some people don't like multi-signature. They're like, oh, you're not sovereign. It's like, no, you're sovereign. It's your keys. We're just custodians, which is why I like to call it collaborative security rather than collaborative custodian. Like, we're really just holding the key. Anyway, so we let him sign with our key, and he sent it off and gone. So he texted us later. He said, I'm devastated. You guys did everything you could. I'm an idiot. I wish I could turn back time. I don't know what to do. And I feel bad. He's I think he's Gen X, but he's in his 50s and he doesn't, he was hoping to get closer to retirement. So
Terrence, I'm curious, where was your sister located? That Renter Tech sounds a little scary. Chilean gang. Where was she?
She's in Laguna Beach in a very nice area. And it's similar to where I am near, Fred Krueger here in Brentwood and whatnot. It's like the gangs go to the nice areas. And so, you got to just be careful. And it's why I like separating my keys. It's why I use, speaking of keys, you guys maybe already talked about the YubiKey. Larry, you may already use this. Like you, I'm with the Fani, to get rid of the SIM swapping. There's just lots of things that we have to be careful of, online. I get those Coinbase calls all the time. I'm sure you guys do. And I get the emails are endless.
River now, too. I'm getting a lot of fake River calls.
Yeah, River calls, River emails. And, I always just do that quick thing you guys might have talked about where I hover my mouse over the link. I don't click it. And, the little preview, it's like, oh, this is not river.com. This is not unchained.com.
Oh, interesting.
Hey, Larry, it's kind of hard to hear you. Mel's telling me to move closer. And Terrence, I have a question for you about your services. Just because I know of you and I know Peter and everything. So that's
Surfer Jim.
Yeah, too well.
Yeah.
But your system is set so that when you're using Unchained has a key and you have a key and the customer has a key. Is that how it works? Is that why he called you and Unchained?
Yeah, correct. And since they only need 2, for everyday spending, they just plug in. And so Unchained or Swan or whatever, because, Unchained has their enterprise key, of course, and then the client has their one key. And so for the most part, no one ever calls us. Like if they call us, there's a problem. Like we've had a few clients who've died. So we help their family, their trust and inheritance, with their keys, sign and move the funds or set up a new vault. But for the most part, it's really mostly high net worth individuals that are with us or companies, or in this case, this guy, Thomas, who just doesn't know how to use keys and he knows he would lose his Bitcoin. Unfortunately, he lost it anyway. But that's really who it's for. A lot, and by the way, we teach people, how to do this completely on their own. It's completely open source. Our website shows and Peter jokes with me all the time because he's like, we don't get any business because of you. And he's like, but I'm happy with that because I want to teach people how to be sovereign, how to do it with Sparrow, however they want on their own. It's like, you guys don't need us, but if after I teach you how to do this is confusing, we'll do something for you.
Blockstream Jade is your easy-to-use, Bitcoin-only cold storage solution made for both experts and beginners alike. Its simple, clean interface makes it a great gift to friends and family just starting down their Bitcoin journey. The open-source hardware of the Jade combined with the open-source software of the Blockstream app means full transparency. Like Bitcoin itself, you never have to trust and can always verify. And at an affordable price, the Blockstream Jade allows you to safeguard your future without breaking the bank. Buy 2, 3, or 4 Jade Classics together and get up to 25% off this holiday season. Plus, get 10% off any Jade with the code BOOMERS. Open source, transparent, Bitcoin only. Blockstream. Peace of mind without compromise. The more your Bitcoin holdings grow, the more complex your challenges become. What started as simple self-custody now involves family legacy planning, sophisticated security decisions, and navigating situations where a single mistake could cost generations of wealth. Standard services weren't built for these high-stakes realities. That's why long-term investors choose Unchained Signature, a premium private client service for serious Bitcoin holders who want expert guidance, resilient custody, and an enduring partnership. With Signature, you're paired with your own dedicated account manager, someone who understands your goals and helps you every step of the way. You get white glove onboarding, same-day emergency support, personalized education, reduced trading fees, and priority access to exclusive events and features. And Unchained's collaborative custody model is designed to provide the same security posture as the world's biggest Bitcoin custodians, but for those who prefer to hold their own keys. Learn more about Unchained Signature at unchained.com/BTC-boomers. Use code BOOMERS10 at checkout to get 10% off your first year. Because Bitcoin isn't just for life, it's for generations.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just didn't know that the keys were divided among 3 people.
Yeah,
Instead
jurisdictionally.
of like the normal, you have 2 and someone else has 1, which makes sense. That they're not going to lose both their keys, you know.
Yeah, and it's not for everybody, but yeah.
We implement at Barefoot, we implement this internally, but, we have 2 keys. The 2 keys we possess are 2,500 miles apart. So, it's, and we have code words and things like that too, to make sure that, this doesn't happen. And I think in terms of like, there's the personal side, and then there's corporate, what you have to do with, corporate management. And like, Joe, are you seeing that? Like, we have all these Bitcoin treasury companies, but we're also seeing some companies start to have treasury. Is there corporate adoption of this sort of thing? Obviously, Barefoot's one, but
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, especially in mining, I'd say a lot more folks that are kind of rooted in Bitcoin or a little more Bitcoin native in their business tend to adopt multi-sig, I think, more readily. You bring up a good point, because there's definitely the social layer around multi-sig, right? It increases some of that capability, especially as in the future there's this kind of arms race to how do we verify who is on the other side of this phone call or even this video call, kinds of things that even the types of questions Gary was asking because of his knowledge about Unchained. I think that's what one layer of adoption on Unchained is very similar to the approach that Terence was talking about. But we have a feature set called Connections, which enable individuals to ask for another account to hold a key and basically share keys with each other across an account. So it's one great way that someone and their uncle or on behalf of their grandma can kind of hold a key, and it creates this extra friction in the process, and this redundancy, of course, because you can just imagine as grandma or somebody might be getting scammed or trying to maybe just sell their Bitcoin because they're feeling out, but there's that idea that family member or someone else can be a really solid verifier of who's actually trying to sign, who's trying to get your Bitcoin on the other end, what are you trying to do, making sure that they're talking to who they are through verifying personal facts and things. And so that's only one way you were encouraging clients to lean into for more robustness on these kinds of scams and issues. Just relying on trusted people, family members, to consider having them hold a key with you. It's a way to just be more resilient overall. And it looks not unlike the kind of corporate controls which businesses have had to figure out over time of just having multiple approvers. And we have had feature sets for many years that enable delegated roles inside of a transaction process of who can stage, who can sign, who can actually submit and broadcast. So you do get that those controls happening inside the organization.
The wrench attack, which I guess Terrence, the thing you had with your sister, I assume she wasn't home when this happened.
No.
So at least the physical threat, but I mean that's a scary thing too. And we were talking again before you were on, Terrence, but like the 4 of us, at least within the Bitcoin community, we are known. There's some level of that we're associated with Bitcoin. People assume we have some Bitcoin. And so I think we all have to have a certain understanding that we we could be subject to that, whether that's, kidnapping or some sort of physical threat. And, Multi-Sig, I think, helps with it a little bit. Like the holder of the other key, in our case, is under strict instructions, regardless of what duress I may be under, to not do anything, right? And that's
that's
probably going
easy
to
to
create.
say now, but if you got a gun at your head,
Yeah. Well, the good news is I can't do anything, right? So it's it would have to be the other person that holds the keys that has to make that decision and to no. And we know in this case Unchained won't do it. And do you ever have those conversations, Terrence, too, like with your holding one of the keys for a lot of your clients? Do you have those kind of conversations ever?
Yeah, a lot. And obviously every setup is different, but if you think of the worst case scenario where someone is breaking into your house and assuming they've gotten past your gates or your security cameras or your firearms, all of which you should have, these people, first of all, it's pretty rare that you're going to have a wrench attack. Everyone wants easy friction. They want probabilities. That's why they're doing all of these online social engineering attacks, right? That's the way, full stop. If someone's breaking in, they're risking spending the rest of their lives in jail, and they want to get in and out quickly. So we recommend different things, whether sometimes it's time locking, which I love because I can just show you, let's go to the mempool and I'll show you, you can't even touch my Bitcoin unless you can travel in time. Like this amount of Bitcoin it's not even available for the next 18 months. I also like the multi-sig because you can even be honest with them or transparent. Say, okay, I have one key on me. I can't do anything. You want to go get the second key? It's on 12 words in a safety deposit box at this bank. So we're going to have to go to the bank where there's security guards, where there's a camera, grab the words, punch. Like at a certain point, you can be honest. And like Gary said, if you're under duress, you sometimes maybe aren't prepared to lie or tell a story. So it's like, great. Do you want to go through? They don't want to. Well, here on this other wallet, I have a whole Bitcoin. Please don't take it. Wow, a whole Bitcoin. Like they're going to take it and run. So I do think a decoy wallet or having more than one wallet is helpful. And like you having them geographically separated, like, great, let's buy airline tickets and jump on a plane because I got to get over here, Yeah. And if the other key is like with Unchained and you have a key on you, which isn't the best in that situation, but then you can always, I forget what you call it, Joe, but it's like whitelisting or there's limits where it's like, okay, here we go. Please don't hurt me. Oh, 20,000 is the most I can send. There's a limit. Otherwise we got to do a video verification. They're going to call me. It's like, so I think you just want to add as much friction as possible.
The whitelisting, maybe you can expand on that, Joe. I'm not sure. I'm familiar with that, and we should also talk about time lock probably a little bit more too, which you brought up, Terrence.
Yeah. So presently we don't have native time lock features built into the vaults. And those kind of thresholds that Terrence is talking about, that depends on the vault type that one has. Like a business vault will have more of those kinds of functionality, but it's not necessarily baked into always, how the key, signature requests. The biggest advantage you have with the signature request from Unchained is a true time delay. It's not instantaneous. So for people that are looking for a signature from Unchained, it often can take 24 to 48 business hours is sort of what we pledge. And I mean, I think that to try to also kind of develop the rubric, I think one thing consistent with a lot of the stories we've talked about is that idea of just slowing down. Like the biggest thing they try to stoke in you is urgency when they've got it in the line. And it's different, of course, that there's these home invasion kinds of scenarios. The urgency is kind of right in your face. It's that manufactured urgency when they're calling you, or because you're on what appears to be a Bloomberg interview and they're trying to, and you're trying to look your best and get this, do a solid interview. And then in that moment, this urgency to download this package or this thing that they're creating for you. That those are always really the biggest risks, or where we're all most susceptible to make mistakes. So just truly just from like if there were a checklist about, how to prevent these kinds of things, it feels like verifying who you are talking to and all the ways you can of that knowledge. And then secondly, like slow way down, and acknowledge that the technology here is such that you can rest assured there's not something that just happened overnight or just, that just puts your keys at risk or something like an Unchained account at risk. That creating a multi-sig wallet is a very, at least as long as it's done thoughtfully, and that the things you use at the instantiation were kept, secret and with care, that there's just no reason to ever have to rush through any process.
Hey, Terrence.
So really, time delays and time locks and things like that also I think are help create guardrails for that.
Sorry, Joe. I thought you had ended there.
I thought it was too.
Hey, Terrence, I was curious as to how long was that guy talking to that woman that stole his Bitcoin? How long did that communication last?
It appears to have been about 2 to 3 weeks. It was very fast. As in most of those pig butchering cases, which what they're called, they contact them on Facebook. And, you can always tell right away if you ask someone, this even happened to my dad, but, I told him, Dad, she's not interested in you. They contact you. They're like, oh, hey, you look pretty attractive. What are you, you seem really nice. And they're phishing. And they used to do this, of course, before crypto. And it's kind of sad because a lot of these people are somewhat modern slaves. They, similar to that TV series, what was that series on Netflix? The Korean one where they were all in debt, and so they went to play this Suicide Games or Squid Games.
Yeah.
Squid Games. And so these people are in debt, and these big factories hire them. They give them a place to live. They give them food, but they immediately become indebted to them. And sometimes they beat them, they harm them, but they have these tiny little dorms where they're with a bunch of people, and they have to collect. What we found out with this client, which was really interesting, it could have been a he, ultimately felt bad for Thomas and privately sent him a message, which he screenshotted and sent to us, where he said, listen, I'm so sorry. I feel terrible, but we're all doing the best we can. God bless you. Hopefully you can make some more money, but I had no choice.
Get it.
Yeah. And yeah, she basically said who you were talking to this whole time was an AI model. It wasn't me. I'm not telling my bosses that you also have stocks, because he does have stocks. And I'm just going to tell him, I'm just going to lie to him and say that you blocked me. So, and I don't know if you guys read, there was an article, I think it was New York Times or The Atlantic, where there was some guy, he was talking to a journalist, and he worked at one of these pig butchering farms, and he had the journalist help him escape. Yeah, Joe, you probably read, it was a pretty popular article that went around and revealed a lot about how these pig butchering scams go in Cambodia and Southeast Asia. And it's tragic.
It is tragic.
So you're saying they're like slave scammers?
Yeah, they're stuck too. I mean, they're scamming, but they have to pay off their debts, or they're basically kidnapped. They're entrapped, and they're beaten if they don't bring in the numbers.
Good God.
Yeah. Now, a lot of these operators have been caught recently, but I don't know how many are out there. And, you think about the social engineering. I'm sure you talked about the whole Roblox crew. A lot of them are here in Los Angeles. They're like 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, and they're the ones that are sending all these Coinbase and Google links to try to get control of your computer, or to have you, change your password so they can see where you have keys. And they're looking in people's iClouds, and, oh, someone screenshotted their 12 words. But most all of them are based here in Los Angeles. You might have heard there were some audio tapes that were going around Twitter where people recorded these scammers. June Seth was one of them. And I think Brandon Quiddiam of Swan recorded another one. And they're just impersonating Coinbase support. Hey, we need to upgrade your thing. Something happened, to make sure it's safe. Give us your 12 words. And a lot of people don't know. And this happened. There was a Bitcoiner who's been around for like 6-7 years. He's been using Sparrow, so he's very sovereign. He got a scam email that said there's now a Sparrow app. Well, there's no Sparrow app. He went to the phone. He punched in his words into the phone on the Sparrow app. He lost 7.4 Bitcoin.
Right.
This was about 12 months ago. Yeah. So it's, I mean, we hear it over and over, and it bears repeating. Like, you just do not, those 12 words are your secret. I always tell people, you can't hold Bitcoin if you can't hold a secret. If you can't keep a secret, you can't keep Bitcoin. It's that simple.
Yeah. I think picking, and some people aren't ready for it. I mean, I think that's the reality, especially in when I say our community, I'm talking about the boomers, the people I interface with. And I think some people would be upset with me for saying it. There are people I interface with here that are in the 70s and 80s who want some Bitcoin exposure. And for them, I have to say, go buy an ETF. Like that's I cringe saying it. I'm sure there are Bitcoiners who get mad at me that I've directed people that way, but it's that or nothing. It's that or
Bob, I just turned 71 Sunday, and you're telling me that. I mean,
well,
you're saying 70-year-olds.
I didn't say all of them. I said some of them. But
no, you're right though, Bob. Some people have to, like my parents would 100% be in ETFs if it wasn't for me, but they actually own spot Bitcoin because I convinced them to convert their bonds into Bitcoin, and and they also use Unchained. So I know they don't know how it all works, but I feel safe knowing that their keys are separated. No one can get it.
Yeah. I think we can do that for our families, but we all have,
right.
I learned this early too. We all have a personal bandwidth, right? Because the first couple people, I was orange pilling, but like, well, let me help you. I'll come over. We'll get a Trezor, or we'll get a cold card or whatever, and we'll set the whole thing up, and it's fine to do that for a couple friends, and then it starts kind of exploding. And then the phone call comes a year and a half later, like, hey, I can't do this. I can't do that. I want to, I want to sell it. What do I do? And you become technical support. And tech support. And,
well, you're the right guy for that.
But, I guess the one thing, because I think look, there's, I guess that's kind of Bitcoin via proxy, and then there's kind of third-party custody, which would be, I guess, having Coinbase hold it for you, or Kraken, or somebody like that. And then there's self-custody, and there's Multi-Sig, and I guess picking the right one for somebody, or maybe even using one of those as the gateway to one of the less sovereign ways as a gateway into it is I guess what I'm getting at is you can't leap to necessarily for everybody.
For sure.
The things that we're talking about, a time lock multi-sig, for instance, is not probably the starting point for everybody.
No. I mean, I could jump in and just say, in general, you have to pretend that, not pretend, what's the right word? Just behave as if anything you want, you're going to go shopping. If I want something, I'm going to go to the mall and buy it. I don't need someone to try to sell me a shirt or pants. And what I mean by that is when I get these emails and it's like, you need to do this, click here, click there. Nope, just delete. I get the phone calls. Nope, just delete. If I need something, I'm going to call Coinbase. I'm going to, go get a new signing device. Wells Fargo, Vanguard, Fidelity, if they're even doing the same things, it's like, no, I don't need to click this link and upgrade. Delete the email and just go to fidelity.com. And now let me see, do I have a notification in there? That's probably the simplest thing. And then I would say hovering your mouse over the links. I mean, I do that every single time just because that just cracks me up how easy it is. And they don't even try to make it close.
Yeah. Some simple, don't open a PDF from an email that you don't know, or a JPEG or anything like that. Just don't open files from people you don't know.
Another way, Bob, is just set your phone not to ring if you don't have the phone number in it, because they'll leave a message. You'll leave a message and you can call them back and then add them to your phone.
Yeah.
Smart.
I like that. Yeah.
I don't know how I did that, but I know I figured it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just awareness. That's why I love y'all are doing this episode, because there's just kind of a new world order about how easy it is. That the cost of attacking is so much lower. But you can't replace just good judgment and people deciding to slow down, not trust phone calls, not trust emails. Even the point about yesterday, I got from an old college professor an email from her actual email address, but it was clearly a phishing. Her email account had been compromised. So you also can't even quite trust the known contacts to send you something that's always trustworthy. Like you do the hovering over links kinds of a thing still really matters too. Just always take careful steps with anything you get.
Have you guys seen that? Oh, go ahead, Bob.
I was just going to say, I think we all have some certain that tingly, spiny senses too. Like,
yes,
pay attention to those because
trust those.
They're probably right. Yeah. Sorry, Terrence, go ahead.
I was going to say, have you guys seen that? It's a newer scam, but it's been going on, I want to say, for the last 6 months. Well, they'll contact people like us here on the stage saying, hey, I want to interview you for a podcast. And they're talking to you as if they understand Bitcoin or crypto. Gary, do you know what I'm talking about?
We covered this earlier. All of
okay.
This.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. They both Larry and I, they came after both Larry and I, posing as Bloomberg people.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't know who they were posing as when they came to me. I can't remember, but like I said, when they asked first question, and they were Bitcoin I had, but I was out of there.
They were really
exactly.
good.
No Bitcoiner would do that.
Yeah, I mean they're really
the
good.
Other one is, I get investors. As a startup CEO, you get investor inbounds that look legitimate or look like some fund, and then not unlike your story, Bob, it was show up at the certain time, or the video software they wanted to use or isn't quite working, or their IT team asked me to install a package or something like that. And then, just a big red. It's already red flag sometimes when you get inbound investor interest, but it's otherwise a double concern when stuff like that happens when you show up. But they really do target you based on your profile and how they can find the right psychological threads to pull on or buttons to push.
Yeah. One last thing. I think I might have mentioned it before, but have with the key people in your life, have some keywords or secret words, so that if you question whether or not something is authentic, you can ask them. I have them with my wife and my children, for instance, that they should something happen, somebody poses as me or somebody's posing as them or something like that, they have to say the word, right? That would be,
or something like only you would know, right? Like what's the color of the seat tractor that Aunt Edna had in the barn?
Correct.
Or whatever.
It has to be. It has to be like that. Yeah. It can't be what's your birthday or
right.
What city were you born in? Like, it has to be like really obscure stuff. So, Joe, one thing we didn't, we kind of talked, I think, a lot about, the scams and those sort of things, but we didn't talk really about planning for the future, the estate planning and the trusts and like those sort of things. And I think it kind of fits into a certain way. Like, how do you secure your Bitcoin and make sure that it passes properly going forward? And I think that's, especially for us boomers, we all face the reality of a ticking clock. So it's a concern. So you want to expand on that maybe?
Yeah. So a lot of it depends on the goal someone's trying to achieve and what their sophistication level is, or what other assets may be involved. Sometimes things can be as simple as, a clear will that names, where the Bitcoin passes on to, and then clear instructions about how to, if it's secured with Unchained, where some key material is that can enable the inheritors or folks, the heirs, to work with Unchained to get the Bitcoin. But increasingly, a very common account type at Unchained is a trust entity. And so a family trust that may be just for the Bitcoin or could be other assets as well. And so that's one way that you can associate that Bitcoin. There are types of trusts where you can still control the asset, There are other types of trusts where you need more of a directed trustee, or you need an institution to actually have control over the account. And that's made possible, at least on Unchained, through our subsidiary called Gannett Trust Company. It's a Wyoming charter trust company that can perform those kinds of services or be a qualified custodian for clients and their Bitcoin. And it's a great format because you can get a lot of the benefits here of, still lack of counterparty risk. If the Bitcoin is at an account at Gannett, the keys can be held still such that Gannett holds a key, Unchained holds a key, and the client or the person instantiating the trust can also retain a key. So a lot of that kind of cryptographic proof or understanding of where the Bitcoin is at all times, and some redundancy in how the keys are held. And then through that kind of structure, generally trusts, when they're set up, it makes it very clear what's going to happen in the event of death, or who inherits this, or who has who are the beneficiaries of that trust in effect. So it's where the rubber starts to meet the road, or as you start to hold Bitcoin for long enough, and then consider it this long-term generational asset, that really does need to integrate with those types of structures. And that's really why we started Gannett, as well as being an institution that can hold stock portfolios, or be a place that other traditional assets can live at and kind of commingle with someone's Bitcoin.
Do the people that reach out to you about that, is there a profile? I'm curious, are they younger? Are they the younger Bitcoiners who maybe understand Bitcoin well and want to be prepared for the future, or is it more the older people who are in the back nine of life who go, I got to deal with this problem? What's the more common profile?
It depends. I mean, certainly, the impetus to set up a trust can come from a couple different angles. On the younger side, it might just be tax. Thinking ahead to like tax consequences, or the ease of moving assets into a trust today helps you or your family in the future with not having as large of a tax bill when there's some realized gains. Asset protection, of course, as well. If you have liabilities because you're a business owner, or you're concerned in marriage or other kinds of scenarios, or getting married later, a trust is a way to segment those assets from those kinds of concerns. But definitely, still the majority of folks that are opting into Gannett or setting up a trust with Gannett's help, they are older. They're thinking about inheritance planning, estate planning kinds of concerns, and those are long cycles. The cycle time of somebody wanting to go down that path, that it could take 6 months of, and usually, and generally for any trust someone's bringing to Gannett, they've worked with an outside attorney to craft their estate plan to make sure that it addresses their personal situation. So these tend to be very customized or tailored solutions. It's not like a cookie cutter one size fits all, because everyone's situation is a little different. Different kids, different spouses or ex-spouses or things like that have to be considered. So that's always there on the personal situation. And then when Gannett receives trust documents, we go through our own process to diligence it and make sure it's clean and maps into what we understand the situation to be, and how Gannett can serve that client over their life and any heirs. So yeah, it's a spread, it's a spectrum, but it does lean towards the older folks that are thinking about this and have the time and bandwidth. I'm still in my late 30s, and so while I have a will, I have some of the basics, I haven't also gotten that next step personally into having a family trust or similar.
Mid-30s, that sounds pretty cool.
Late 30s.
Late 30s, mid-40s would sound cool. Hey guys, I've got to go. I've got another meeting. I got to be Joe and Bob. I'll see y'all, I guess, next month at BitBlock Boom. Terrence, if you're interested in the pass, hit me up and I'll take care of you.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that, Gary.
Yeah. And I enjoyed it, guys. See y'all later.
Thank you.
See you, Gary.
Well, maybe as we wrap up, kind of go off topic for a minute. I'd just like to get your guys' perspective on one other thing. I think there was a big milestone in Bitcoin, and I should point out we're recording this on March 10th of 2026. And I think it was in the last 36 hours, we passed the 20 millionth Bitcoin being issued. And so we got only a million potential left. And I say potential, by the way, because it's one of the things, being a little more on the technical side and being a miner, I think one interesting thing about Bitcoin is that there's actually no guarantee of issuance, that the miner who creates the block decides whether or not they want the Bitcoin or not. And if they don't take it, it's gone forever. There's a one-time chance. And there are a few cases in history where it didn't happen. Unlikely to happen a lot, but certainly possible. But I find it fascinating, and because of the way Bitcoin works as well, over the next 5 years, half of that million will be gone too. So it really is scarce, and you guys have both been around Bitcoin for a long time and kind of have watched this thing, and just wonder what thoughts, emotions that brings to you.
You want to go first, Joe?
Sure, I can go first. I mean, really, I think that thinking or appreciating that fact that most all Bitcoin that will exists today, it's really why Unchained's business model is geared towards long-term financial services. So, and add to that the fact that most Bitcoin that's already here doesn't move in a given year, that at least 60% of Bitcoin historically is older than a year in terms of sitting in the address that it's been in. And so that's kind of, that's how Unchained has geared our business model towards long-term holdings. And yeah, it's why we exist, really.
Yeah, it's really cool to think about. We know that Bitcoin, of course, is finitely scarce, but when you suddenly realize that there's only 1 million left and it's going to be now spread out over, the next 114 years or whatever, yet it took 17 years to get 20 million. I think that's pretty cool. I like to sort of think about it in that, there's 20 million private keys. There's private keys available for 21 million Bitcoin, right? Like we'll get private keys eventually because it's all there per the code. We know it's there, just, not in the circulating supply. But then, yesterday I was just thinking, I was like, what other amazing commodities or assets or systems have come in this way? And I don't know if Satoshi was thinking this at the time when he did it. I mean, I think it's obviously smart to incentivize the early adopters by getting more. And of course, when there's no price at all or a few pennies, you want to start getting more so that it spreads out. But it's like, well, I think about like the gold rush in California. I think about like the oil boom in Texas. I think about just the land rush, right? The early pioneers running out and staking. And it's kind of like, there probably were these natural halvings in a sense where the early people, I can go get as much land as I want, and look at all this oil in Texas. But it's like, it starts crimping down. It's finite. And maybe that's a more fair system in that it's egalitarian in that whoever wants to put in the work can get it, but it's not going to be equal outcome. Some people want to work harder. Some people want to contribute more to an economy.
Yeah. And only those people that recognize it, like I said, that may be over in the physical world. Maybe some other element or something will be found, and there'll be some sort of an opportunity like that. But unlikely, I would say, at this point, that in the physical world such a thing occurs. And I think you gave really good analogies. And this may be the only one in the digital world, because at least I'm guessing you guys are with me that I don't think Bitcoin is replicable. So, this might be the last opportunity in humanity for such a thing. And I think it is cool because not only do you have to put in the work, you have to identify that this is the thing, like that this is a thing worthy of that amount of energy and that amount of work to pursue. And, we all got it at a different point. I got it in 2017. Others got it in 2015, 2013, 2011, and they got rewarded a hell of a lot more, right? There's one other thing that I do a lot of speaking. In fact, I'm going to speak at Big Block Boom about it, is the scarcity of block space itself, I think, will it has a certain attribute like this, because it's finite. There's only 53,000 blocks a year. And right now, I think as Bitcoiners, we take for granted that block space will be there when we need it for essentially for free. And I believe that someday that won't be the case. I do a lot of reading on economics, and there's David Ricardo, famous economist in the late 1700s, and there's something called David Ricardo's rent theory. And what he did was he looked at the scarcity of agricultural land, much like you were referring to, Terrence, in Europe at the time, and said, well, there's only a finite amount, and what happens to the price of that land as demand grows, when you have basically this thing of fixed supply and increasing demand, and as expected, it's an exponential reaction to that commodity. And but this is a stark, I think, like I said, it's a stark reminder. I found it very cool. That we passed 20 million. I just find really cool, because I won't see 21, right? I won't see 21 million.
None of us will.
None of us will. Yeah. In fact, we don't actually even get there. We never get there.
You mean just nominally? Yeah.
Well, no, actually, it's more than nominal, because in the history of Bitcoin, there are several instances where the full reward was not captured.
Oh, do they just not put their address in the Coinbase? How do you not capture it?
So, well, here's what happens. So I'm a miner and I create templates, right? So, I have the choice or the responsibility to claim the subsidy and claim the fees, but I don't have to. And so, there are cases in history where the miner, for whatever reason, didn't take the full amount. And that's, some people believe it's like an homage to Satoshi. Like they would just, it's not a burn. It's an issuance that never happened. So it's a subtlety.
Right. And it doesn't go back in. It's not like it just loads back up. Yeah.
Right. So, because what happens is what the protocol actually manages is the maximum amount you can take.
Right.
It doesn't say you have to issue it. It just says, hey, right now you can issue 3 1/8 Bitcoin plus whatever the fees were, but you could choose or miscalculate and not take the whole thing. And like there is a couple examples. I think there are 2 where right before a halving, somebody clearly loaded the wrong template, and they took the post-halving subsidy and not the pre-halving subsidy.
Wow. They have themselves.
They have themselves early, and then that Bitcoin is gone forever. Like it's just not, it'll never be in existence. There's no way for it to come back in, because it's each block is a unique opportunity for the subsidy to be released or the fees to be claimed. Yeah. So
I think that's why there was a discrepancy yesterday when we hit, because it looked like at 939,999 that block was like, 20 million, and then some of the technical basement dwellers were like, no, actually
that was me. That was me.
No, I get it now.
Like, well, I'm the guy that, actually, we're not there yet. So wait a few minutes, wait a few blocks, then we'll get there. So yeah. You hate being that guy, but
No, but it's a great way to learn, and it always speaks to the fundamentals and properties of Bitcoin, which I think we love.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey guys, probably a good time to wrap up. Terrence and Joe, maybe just tell people how they can contact you and learn more about you.
Sure. Happy to find me us at unchained.com. My email is joe@unchained.com. So feel free to drop me a note if we can be helpful.
And I'm just proof of money on X, on Twitter. And I'm always there.
Hey, you. Yes, you watching the Bitcoin price movements and the latest exciting news. It's awesome to stay informed, but the real power of Bitcoin comes from taking control. Don't just watch, take action. Head over to btcsessions.ca/learn for free step-by-step tutorials that guide you through every major skill you need to know, plus full video playlists for deeper dives on any topic you like. And if you're ready for the ultimate fast track, scroll to the bottom and check out bitcoinmentor.io for premium one-on-one experience with my team of Bitcoin experts to ensure you get it right the first time. Don't wait. Secure your Bitcoin future today. Hit the link in the show notes or scan the QR code on the screen.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Bitcoin Boomers, please do like and subscribe and check out some of the tutorials or other podcasts on this channel.